Most of these people are not really insiders. They are people who are chosen to do an interview, and they will make a statement and say they are a part of the hip hop culture. And from an intellectual standpoint, they are not very sharp because back in the 90s, 91, one would criticize somebody for doing a type of commercial and saying, that's not real hip hop. And then another rapper turns around and sells them malt liquor and says, that's real hip hop. Who would want to be considered a part of a culture or an insider? A man who is educated or someone who wants to be a part of a clique that doesn't even understand what they are saying or speaks from both sides of their mouth? That, my friends, was the great MC Hammer. And this is AllMinucOne. My name is Bill. Please, if you like my content, like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. I will probably comment back. If you say something mean, well, I might make fun of you. It's hard to say. Today should be kind of brief, as I'm spilling tea all over my face. Because I have a live show to do later. The Ends Justify the Memes. That's over on D Live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. In any case, I just saw some articles I thought were funny and interesting, considered where they come from, and I just thought I would talk about them and the political climate. Tomorrow and Friday, I should be doing 2 more segments. This week, I've been sleeping decent. Folks, if I'm not putting out content, it's because I'm an insomniac, and sometimes it's hard with other responsibilities I have on top of not sleeping. So, let's get into it. From The Intercept. Trump's turn from immigration to the enemy within. Trump's shift from demonizing immigrants to targeting leftists is straight out of the fascist playbook. What absurdity. What absurdity. So if you're not aware, The Intercept is Glenn Greenwald's outlet. Glenn Greenwald is a left-wing journalist who actually covered Trump rather fairly with all of the fake Russiagate scandal stuff. And as we know right now, folks, those documents have been declassified, and they are talking about how the Democrats set him up and how they scammed and plotted. They're actually the Russian colluders. Imagine that. Color me shocked. The Democrats did something backhanded and blamed their opponent of the same thing that they did. It's amazing. It's like, who could have foreseen that? Well, anybody who follows politics at all and has any sort of brain could foresee that. And I'm not an insider, folks. I know some insiders, but I'm certainly not an insider. I don't get any of my stuff from insiders. I watch and I pay attention and I read and I follow the patterns. And I see the course of the government over the years, and I study the history, and that lets me understand what is actually going on. And I don't listen to, nonsense like Howard Zimm's, History of America, whatever the book's called, which is just agit-propped. Look, guys, you need to get a better BS detector. And maybe it's just my life experience. Maybe it's because I live with a woman that lied to me for 7 years constantly about everything. Maybe it's because I worked in a jail where people were lying to me constantly about everything. Maybe it's because I generally have always been able to judge character, but learned to be too forgiving of people, and then them coming back and burning me because I was just the nice guy, if you would, until I learned how to hold my ground and stand up for myself. I don't know. But what I do know is that I see right through all of this nonsense. And for The Intercept, an outlet that is very much on the anti-war left, and was seeing that the whole Russiagate, Ukrainegate nonsense, Steele dossier, all that stuff, Mueller report was a bunch of hooey, to publish articles like this is just insane to me. They should be full on Trump. They're basically backing Biden. which will just get them back into more wars. And by the way, folks, if you're backing Biden, you're actually backing Kamala Harris. If you're not aware, that's who you're really backing. But let's get into this article. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure The Intercept's website does not work with my dark mode, so I get to go blind while I'm trying to read this to you. So here we go. So listening to Donald Trump describes the U.S. in 2016 was to hear a story of a nation in peril of losing its identity to waves of brown-skinned invaders. No, in fact, that's not what listening to him was. What he was saying is that illegal immigration hurts the people who are immigrating, which is true, and it hurts the American people as it siphons off resources and jobs. This is all true, folks. You can't have a welfare state, which many of you on the left want, and like unvetted immigration. Immigration and the border, particularly the urgent need to build a wall between the U.S. and Mexico, dominated Trump's campaign rhetoric. Except for at the same time, Bill Clinton talked about this, George Bush talked about this, and Barack Obama, as well as Chuck Schumer and many other people within the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders himself said you cannot have unregulated immigration, illegal immigration, if you're going to have the socialism that he wants to implement in the United States. He said this in 2015, 2016. Like, get out of here, folks. How short is your memory? You just don't pay attention, and that's usually the case. By the way, any rhetoric Trump said about rapists and murderers and criminals, that a lot of that's true. It's not that everyone who comes over is any of those things. It's that the people that are trafficking people over are those things. You know, there was a report that all the feminists should jump on, but they ignore it because it doesn't go with their ideology of, oh, just let free immigration, open borders, and everything, everything will be great, and you're just mean, you don't want the poor people to be in, you don't want the brown, you're xenophobic. Something like 80% of women crossing the border or in their trip through this migration, they get raped. Now, I don't know the efficacy of that study, but it was put out there, and it was put out there by a left-wing source. So let's not play games about this. And again, this is just ridiculous. The Intercept would even put any of this stuff out, but whatever. Once in office, the president's top immigration advisor, Stephen Miller, ramped through one punishing initiative after another, banning travelers from Muslim majority countries. No, he banned Islamist countries that had a terrorist problem. They were not Muslim majority countries. Most Muslim countries were actually still available to travel to the U.S. And by the way, he's allowed to do that. That's part of the national security. Separating immigrated children from their parents to deter them from making the journey north. No, Obama did that. Obama started that policy. Trump ended it. There was a lot of press about it. Trump did not do that. It's really funny. This is a publication that makes money. And I know more than the writer of this. And by the way, the folks, however articulate or inarticulate I am, or if I have a frog in my throat or whatever it is, I'm a far better writer than I am a speaker. This is just absolute garbage. It's just easier to speak and get through these things quicker than to write a bunch of things down. Anyways, forced tens of thousands of asylum seekers to wait in their cases in the border's most dangerous cities. Well, wait a minute. I thought illegal immigration wasn't a problem. Why are they the most dangerous cities? Oh, lefties have no logic. It's all emotions, folks. All emotions. Care and fairness on that Jonathan Haidt moral foundation scales. And plowing through protected lands to stand up to towering new sections of border wall. Ooh. All hyperbole. All of it. All of it. Every ounce. Today, asylum at the border is effectively dead, and Trump's Department of Homeland Security is using the coronavirus as a pretext to boost immigration out of the country. Okay, folks, when the coup hit, you know what happened? Mexico shut down its border with the United States. I laughed about it. I posted about it because I was like, oh, the irony. The very fact that this whole thing happened, even though I don't think it's that big of a deal, but even though this entire thing or the fact that this entire thing happened shows the reason why you want border control, why you want to know who's coming in and out of your country. It's an issue of protecting your people and their liberties. It says including families, children, babies as swiftly as possible. So let's see there. Let's say how many lies were here. Well, that's a lie. Had nothing to do with brown skin. Immigration at the border, particularly urgent need to build a wall. Well, that's sort of true. Trump campaign rhetoric, yeah, but you're it's a half lie because you're not talking about the predecessors, the people that came before Trump that were saying the exact same thing. And by the way, folks, it's very well documented. You can look it up. Once in office, the president's top immigration advisor banned travelers from Muslim. No, he didn't do that. It was countries with high ISIS activity. Makes sense considering, things like 9/11. Separated immigrant children from their parents. No, the Obama administration did that, and Trump just, they were carrying out that policy and they changed it. And then the most dangerous cities. Well, I thought those cities were all perfectly safe being there on the border because it's not like MS-13 or drug cartels or anything operate down there. No, not at all. Speaking of someone, by the way, who formerly worked in law enforcement and got intel briefings, even though I'm far away from there, I know how the gangs and all that stuff work. You remember Breaking Bad, that big show that everyone liked? I mean, come on, folks. Stop being stupid. What was the... There's a movie some years ago about the drug war, about them burrowing tunnels underneath the wall from Hollywood. I can't remember what it was. Was it Syriana? I don't think that was it. That was some other movie. Anyways, whatever it was. Like, come on. What are you doing? But that's why I brought up the MC Hammer quote. Didn't need a serious quote. This guy's not an insider. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a fool. Anyways, let's keep going. So it may have come as a surprise to some that immigration hardly came up at all in the first presidential debate of 2020. Well, yeah, because we're under this supposed pandemic where everyone's supposed to wear a mask all the time and lockdown. And oh my God, the president took off his mask. He took off his mask when he was on the balcony of the White House. Oh, sorry, folks, I dropped my mouse. Oh, this is the thing that happens when you do these things in one take. No cut and editing. Saves me a lot of time, but you guys get everything. You get the real me, that's for a fact. This is at least particularly due to the fact that Trump administration framing of its priorities has evolved over the past several months. And waves of protesters challenging the power and brutality of American policing have swept the country. That started under Obama. Without question, the anti-immigration machinery marches on. In July, the Migration Policy Institute cataloged more than 400 executive actions the administration has taken on immigration since Trump's inauguration. Well, big deal. Those policies continue to impact countless individuals and families across the country and around the world every day. Okay, well, how about America first? How about we take care of Americans without jobs? How about we worry about... This is the thing I can't stand about this leftist, progressive, regressive nonsense. How about we get our own house in order, as Jordan Peterson would say. We clean our own room before we go out and help society, the rest of the world. Because if we're crumbling and falling apart here at home, if we have people that are ill, that are without jobs, without proper health care, without proper education, whatever it is, and I don't think the government has or should have a lot of influence in any of those things, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think because the government already thinks it does, and most of the population does. So that's how it is. And so I can talk about how it should be and how I'd like it to be, but let's look at reality, how it is. And how it is right now the Rust Belt. There are people within the Rust Belt, the Iron Belt specifically, that are sitting there, mayors saying they're going to vote for Trump, trade unions that are saying they're going to vote for Trump. The civil unrest that is going on started under the Obama administration. Both Black Lives Matter and Antifa started under his administration. It's Trump's fault. They want you to forget. This is all just a bunch of nonsense gaslighting, folks. And frankly, like you know what impacts people around the world? War, where we decide to bomb people and murder and kill and do all kinds of crazy stuff that we do with our foreign policy by that legacy deep state, rhinos and dinos, those people that don't care about you but care about a globalist agenda. It says if the claims of a former DHS official are true, Miller has an immigration campaign of shock and awe. Well, what DHS official? Was he part of the deep state? Draw up and ready to go should Trump remain in office. I want to recall this little portion here that MC Hammer said. Someone who wants to be part of a clique and doesn't understand what they're saying and speaks out of both sides of their mouth. Yeah, that seems like that's probably what that DHS person is. That's what the author of this probably is. But those without simultaneously in motion, the Trump administration has increasingly and preeminently centered purported threats posed by leftist, anarchist, and anti-fascist in its bid to hold on to power. These people are burning down city blocks. They're destroying businesses as the economy from many of these areas is being shut down by mayors and governors and county ordinance. Trump locked down the nation, not really, but just gave suggestions because he understood his constitutional duty. Locked down the nation for what, 6 weeks or so, and then said we should start opening up. And you, Intercept, you people in the media, mainly the legacy media, the Intercept isn't quite part of that, but you decided, we're going to keep going against Trump and we're going to ring up this whole thing where he's a fascist and we're going to let them protest in the street and riot and burn things down and call it peaceful. This widening of the threat aperture is straight out of the authoritarian playbook, says John Stanley, a professor of philosophy at Yale University and author of How Fascism Works, the Politics of U.S. and Them. Oh, of us and them, sorry. Yeah, I can tell you how fascism works. It's a centralized control economy that essentially allows the government to control the means of production while allowing a private business to still work at the same time. But you have to talk to a government official in order to get the raw materials you need, and they don't completely dictate what's made, but if you want something made, you essentially have to bribe somebody. Gunter Riemann covered this pretty well in his Vampire Economy, and I'm going to guess that this Jason Stanley professor has never read such a book or understands anything about fascism. I'm just going to assume. I don't know. You begin with something that separates citizens from non-citizens, Stanley told The Intercept, explaining how fascistic power grabs often take place. Oh, is that like wait a minute. Is that a little bit like the Nazis said the Jews were the problem of all of society? Well, who's saying that? What's the problem of all society right now? Is it immigration? Is it immigrants? Trump didn't say that. He said we had to get control of the problem. Is it white men? We are the worst, by the way. I mean, white men are absolutely the worst. We're the problem. We're the true problem. Who's the fascist? Fascism is a left-wing ideology, folks. It is a progressive, that is regressive ideology. It's an ideology about authoritarian central control. Donald Trump is none of those things, obviously. If he was, We'd be living in a very different state. He wouldn't care about the Congress or any of the other things. There wouldn't be a fight. There wouldn't be the gridlock. We'd have multiple stimulus packages. There would be all kinds of things going on. These people writing this stuff are just absolutely insane. They've lost their mind. You have your colonial war, your war on terror, your imperialist war that forces and distinguishes between citizens and non-citizens, and then you direct that force inwards against your political opponents. Yeah, it sounds like the Democrats. They just did that, right? What was this whole Russiagate thing? Also, didn't Obama kill a U.S. citizen on foreign soil without trial through drone strikes? Yeah, he did. He did. Didn't Obama send in troops to crush National Guard and whatever else to crush riots in Ferguson and Baltimore and other places? Yeah, he did. He did. Donald Trump's been avoiding that. And the reason why is because no matter what he does, he's going to be said to have done wrong. You can't ever give the guy a win. Actually, Tim Pool covered an article today in the Washington Post about them actually giving Trump some credit, which is amazing. It's absolutely incredibly amazing. But anyways, let's move on. It says, in the case of Trump, the first 3 years of the administration features talks of threats from the MS-13 gang members. Okay, MS-13, folks, I went into corrections in 2004, and I left, 3 or 4 years ago? And MS-13 was a topic that we talked about constantly. It has been covered by MSN, CNN, ABC, CBS. It's been talked about over and over and over again. Are they a huge threat in the United States? Not. I don't think so. In isolated pockets in some areas. Are they like they were in El Salvador? No way. Over there, they would behead people and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But they do run drugs in certain areas. And look, there's a reality to it, folks. Quit living in this fantasy world. See, when you live in like suburbia, when you have this like cushy, lovely, suburban, isolated life, you don't understand what the world realities are. I recall one time, my sister was talking, I don't know what she was talking about, but she was talking about something about, like, she didn't want to, she was worried about where her daughter went to dance downtown or something like that. I don't even recall. And, you know, the people seemed shady and blah, blah, blah. And I said, they're fine. I said, I know those guys over there. She goes, what do you mean you know them? I'm like, I know them from jail. And she goes, what do you mean you know them from jail? And I'm like, they're inmates. They're former inmates. And she's like, you know inmates out in town? I'm like, sis, I know like a couple thousand people out in town that are former inmates. You don't know what you're talking about. You live in this little elitist, isolated bubble, and that's fine. Like, live that way. I want to go live off in the mountains, guys. But like, don't think that your nice, peaceful, suburban surroundings or your little gentrified city area, whatever it is the reality of the world. The world is far more dangerous, to include the United States, depending on where you go, depending on who you hang out with, depending on the choices that you make. So when there are issues affecting certain groups, you know, you get snobby people who are elitists, and they sit up and someone made a Twitter post a while back, a video talking about how they were in New York, and they're like, oh yeah, New York, oh, look at my neighborhood, it's completely fine. It's like, yeah, you live in the rich neighborhood, not the neighborhood that is being looted and burnt right now. You can't look out the window. I can look out the window right now, and I see suburbia. And it's very nice here. It's peaceful. And I can be thankful for that. But I don't live in some reality where I'm like, danger, trouble, evil does not lurk around the corner, because it does at all times. And honestly, it kind of scares me that our society is so pacified that we just allow these things to go and we just pretend like it doesn't exist. It's really truly weakness within our society. All right, let's see here. It says migrant caravans marching north through Mexico. That's happening again right now, apparently. Islamic State killers hidden amongst refugees populations and more. They've been caught. There was an ISIS training camp found in Mexico training young children, like or not Mexico, in the Southwest. It might have been New Mexico, Arizona, something like that. All were couched in terms of threat and the homeland and invasion that posed a danger to the national security and warranted decisive law enforcement and military response. And here's the other thing with articles like this. And then they'll say, well, it's the white supremacist. And I don't know. I haven't read this yet, actually. I just found the headline enticing. I thought, well, we'll talk about it. But that is like always the go-to. And it's like, white supremacists aren't a threat in America, folks. With the KKK and other white supremacist groups or whatever, there's something like 10,000 recorded members currently in the entire United States. You might get some skinhead bikers somewhere. Like, I'm not seeing reports of that. What I'm seeing is reports of white people attacking other white people, black people attacking Jews and white people, Muslims attacking Jews and white people. That's what I'm seeing. And we're not supposed to talk about it because somehow I'm a racist if I talk about the truth. It has nothing to do with that. But you are a racist when you say that it's all white people that are the problem. Like, that's just the reality, folks. That's just racist. We can talk about white supremacy and how those things exist. Obviously, the Proud Boys were in the news recently. Proud Boys aren't white supremacists. They weren't really infiltrated by white supremacists. That's all nonsense. But hey, is what it is. Let's keep moving. In some cases, such as October 2018, immigrant caravans that led military deployments to the border during the midterm elections, the supposedly increased severity of the threat coincided with important electoral moments. Well, those people are funded, though, as well. And who funds them? Who encourages them to come? And also, did you see them at the gates of the border? Do you understand why they needed to keep that peace? And Trump, by the way, essentially let the Mexican government handle things and has brokered a deal with them to do such a thing. And he said he would. And that's a big thing for a lot of people. So he's kept a lot, if not all, most of all of his promises. They may not have been perfectly done, but they certainly weren't like Obama. Oh, I'm going to get rid of Gitmo. No, not getting rid of Gitmo. From the outset, the White House has argued that certain jurisdictions, so-called sanctuary cities typically run by members of the president's opposing political party, provide cover for dangerous outsiders. Is that not true? In response, the DHS has launched high-profile blitz into these cities, at times deploying militarized Border Patrol tactic units. To support immigration and customs enforcement, operations deep in the urban settings and often producing media-ready photo and video packages to illustrate the president's resolve. The administration is framing it of its adversaries entered a new phase with the killing of George Floyd and the protests that followed as the country witnessed a challenge to the legitimacy of policing unlike anything in recent memory. I don't know what the numbers are. There's some odd million interactions a year. Most people don't have that hard of a time with police. There are I don't know how many deaths, something like 900 shootings or something a year by police. I might be wrong on these numbers, folks. You can fact check me. I don't really care at the moment. Just throwing it out there. Of that, what was it? They found out 9. This is from the Washington Post report. 9 were black men that were unarmed or black individuals. In almost every case, there was a legitimized use of force. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor real quick. Her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend or whoever in the world he had originally claimed that she shot. Then he said he shot. Now I think he's reversing the story and saying she shot. What I don't understand as a shooter in my former life, as a highly trained tactical Marine, infantryman, well-versed in CQB, urban combat instructor, security force, which is hit or miss depending on what unit you're in. But Look, guys, I know what I'm shooting at if something's going to pop out. If a cop got shot in the leg and they return fire, unless they return blind fire, which is also, by the way, why I want the body cam footage released, I find it hard that she was hit and he wasn't, that the boyfriend wasn't. But either way, she was on that warrant. It was a no knock, but they did knock. People in the neighboring apartments heard. I'm sure they heard. They shouldn't have tried to engage the police. She wasn't innocent. George Floyd wasn't innocent. He also died mainly of fentanyl. Now, should that cop have knelt on his neck? Maybe. For that long? No. Certainly not for that long. But, I get it. I've had to wrestle and struggle with people. I understand what reality is, and most of you don't. In the protests that followed, as the country witnessed the challenge to the legitimacy of policing unlike anything else in recent memory, man, this is just such leftist garbage. While the vast majority of those protests followed the traditional nonviolent civil rights model, no, they didn't. They did not. Immediately, there was looting. Within the first few days, there were some odd 20 people killed. David Dorn. Remember David Dorn? There was a former Marine who was guarding a local police station in Portland. I believe it was Portland. It might have been Seattle. Who had to take an AR-15 away from two individuals that they got out of police cars. Stuck a gun right in his face, and the kid went deer in headlights because he's never been in combat. He's never had to fight somebody. Nothing for real. The unsurprising beginning with a police precinct being set ablaze, and to this day, a considerable number of protesters remain unapologetic when it comes to the militancy of their demands and actions. Against the backdrop of this upheaval, the Trump administration has embraced what Stanley would describe as a second phase of fascist power grab, the turn inwards. Well, I'm not really going to read more of this because it's just infuriating nonsense. The reality is, look, the president has described the leaderless anti-fascist movement known as Antifa and as a terrorist organization. That it has been claimed by the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI as a terrorist organization for years now. And the conservative media ecosystem has fallen in line behind him. As The Intercept reported in July, and the senior DHS, blah, 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 whistleblower arrested last month, have downplayed the lethal threat from right-wing extremists. I knew it would be there. I knew it. I called it. Right-wing extremists, white supremacists amid the unrest. No, they're not. All right. The Daily Caller had its riot squad team on Tim Pool the other week. They interviewed them. They said they saw none of this. They did see at one point the Proud Boys, which are not white supremacists, folks, but the Proud Boys, they saw beat up a guy. But the guy, I guess, was being aggressive toward them. I don't know. But that's the only right-wing violence that they saw. And I actually kind of really reject that ideology anyways, because this is just a nonsense label. What is right-wing? Freedom. I look at things in a perspective of liberty and tyranny. Liberty is being able to do what you want. Tyranny is having overbearing regulations and upon you and being a slave to the state. Fascistic ism, right? Fascism, the fascii, is a symbol from ancient Rome of a bundle of sticks with an axe in it. And the point of it is the bundle of sticks together is stronger. Isn't that the idea of diversity is our strength? Isn't that the idea of intersectionalism? That together, being an ally, you're stronger. Isn't that the idea of the black bloc? See, I only care about first principles. I don't care about what some college Marxist professor states something is. I care about what is and what is true. right? You have to understand the idea of first principles, the philosophical concept that a duck is a duck, right? Maybe a different kind of duck. It's still a duck. There are dozens, hundreds of different breeds of dogs. They are all freaking dogs. They are all animals of that same kind. They might look different. They might act a little bit different. They might have different personalities. They're all dogs. And right wing means only one thing in the classical sense of America, and that is conservatism towards our constitutional way of life. That is to maintain the republic and not have a democracy, which is mob rule. That's what right wing means. Now, when we start to talk about center right, center left, what we're talking about is a group of people who control the government, neolibs, neocons, or the rhinos and the dinos. That is, Democrat in name only, Republicans in name only. These people are big government people. They're actually globalists. What are globalists? Well, globalists are actually on the left. They're on the left. If you look, folks, and I'm going to cover this tomorrow or Friday, but if you look at the history of the United States in the last 100 years and who has controlled the House and the Senate, it has been the Democrats. The Democrats have controlled the United States government for over 100 years. And the Republicans that have essentially rose to power and become prominent, they have strayed away from their past. They've strayed away from that Ron Paul Republican, from that Rand Paul Republican, from that Ronald Reagan, from William F. Buckley, from those mindsets, those ideas, and they've become neocons, big government Republicans. The Republican Party has never been a completely unified party except for briefly after the Civil War. And what you saw was people flip sides quite often. And it's the only time they've ever had and maintained power was during Reconstruction and briefly afterward. That is the history. That is how things have gone. When you're talking about right wing in the United States, as far as extremism and racism, whatever else, you're talking about traditionalism. You're trying to conflate traditionalism with a system of fascism, which was about rejecting liberalism, classical liberalism. Read the doctrines of Mussolini, the doctrines of fascism, that is. Read Mussolini's writings. Read Giovanni Gentili. Read what Hitler had to say. They rejected classical liberalism. And fascism came from socialism. It is a form of centralized government and monetary control. We have some of that in the United States. Absolutely. Guess who put it into place? Well, it started with Woodrow Wilson when he implemented the federal income tax and the Federal Reserve Bank. And then FDR came along and amplified everything. And we've been living underneath that FDR system ever since. Guess who regulates farming in this country? The United States federal government. And guess what? The big pharma is regulated by them as well. As far as the farming agricultural industry goes, they have been getting subsidies since the 1930s. Big Pharma is regulated by them. They get whatever they get, and the insurance companies regulated. But you want more involvement with the healthcare system within the government. That's fascism, folks. Sorry to tell you. That's actually what fascism is. What you want on the left is fascism. What I want is a free market. What I want is sound money. What I want is liberty. It has nothing to do with your regressive ideas that are on the left about control and collectivism. Remember the fascii, right? Being fascistic, all that. That's collectivism. What is communism? What's the commune? It's collectivism. What is socialism? Well, it's the society. It's social engineering. These are all the same thing based on first principles. There is no right-wing hate squads. There is no right-wing death squads out there. There are people that love their nation and the idea of the Constitution and the fact that they have free speech and that they can bear arms and they're supposed to have a swift and speedy trial and that the military, that is the Third Amendment, cannot be housed within your quarters. That we are free from being searched and having our things, our assets seized immediately. And trust me, we don't live up to this. Guess who have implemented most of these things? Well, if you're on the left, you're about to vote for him. His name's Joe Biden. He implemented a lot of those things. They've been implemented over the years. The left, the Democrats, do not care about our Constitution, folks. They don't care. And they're going to point to the liberty-minded people all they want, say they're fascists. And I can tell you right now, the people in the liberty movement, they don't care if you're gay, if you're black, if you're Hispanic, whatever you are. They don't care. What they care is that you believe in the Constitution and you will leave them alone. All right, I got one last thing here. Let's see. So, Mr. Glenn Greenwald himself, why are Democrats praying for a speedy recovery of a fascist dictator? This was the fourth. Of course, Trump is doing quite well because the coronavirus is not that big a deal. Now, he did get some special treatment, but guys, it's not a big deal. You look at the numbers. People typically rejoice over, not lament the death of someone they genuinely believe is a fascist dictator. So he says, Trump thinks he can dupe Americans like the people of Germany were duped by Adolf Hitler. Ooh! What a bunch of garbage, man. So many of you buy this out there. And probably not anyone watching this, but man, those that do buy this, it's just so absurd. You've never studied anything. You've never read anything. You've never thought deeply. You just are emoting, and you're just going with the crowd. You're just being a tribalistic. That actually makes you a fascist, by the way. I love it when people on the left show that picture of the guy in Nazi Germany standing in the crowd, not doing the Roman salute. And there's the meme is like, be this guy. And I'm like, yeah, you're not that guy. You're everyone else. You realize that, right? Like cussing out Donald Trump and saying you hope he dies. That's like everyone else. And you all think that we're the zombies that like Donald Trump. And again, I was a reluctant Trump voter. I came to him over the last year or so. I mean, I've been cheering for him and hoping he's doing well, but I been watching all this nonsense that's been going on. I'm pretty sure the guy was good to go, but I was just like, oh man, I'm not really sure. Guy needs to quit tweeting, needs to shut up. And that's like most people. But in the end, it's about results. It's not about appearances. So he says here, the typical reaction to the death of a tyrant, whether by revolutionary violence or natural causes, not one of grief or sadness, but jealousy jealous or joyous celebration. And not hard to understand why. When a nation its oppressed citizens are finally liberated from the suffocating, savage grip of fascist dictatorship, they feel joy for themselves, their families, and futures of a nation. That is the same reason why people have always hoped for and worked towards the death of despots, and they rid themselves of those who impose tyranny on them. When the Romanian leader I'm not going to read all this. Fidel Castro died. Yet in the U.S., a radically different dynamic is playing out. Over the past several years, but particularly in months heading into 2020 election, has become extremely common for prominent Democrats and their media allies to refer to President Trump as a dictator, a fascist, a tyrant, hell-bent on destroying the U.S. democracy. Well, yeah, Glenn, your own outlet just did that. Look at this article I just read from the very day before. Like, what is wrong with you, dude? And yet the overwhelming reaction on these mainstream precincts in the news is that the fascist dictator has contracted a potentially lethal virus and hopes that potentially lethal, driving a car is potentially lethal, folks. And praying that he makes a speedy recovery, whereby he can resume his democracy-destroying, genocidal tyranny, fascist rule. No, because they don't believe it. They don't buy it. And that's really what this article is about. And two powerful House Democrats invoke Adolf Hitler in Germany. Blah, 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 blah. Yet when Cyburn learns this week's of our modern-day Hitler, who is the one on the precipice of ending democracy, had contracted the fatal virus, he did not celebrate, but instead, for the same reason, lamented the news, wishing the first family a speedy and complete recovery. Why would you possibly wish recovery rather than a quick demise to someone you believe is a Hitler-like perpetrator of genocide whose recovery would enable fascism to continue? That seems counterintuitive and counterproductive. And then Manuel does the same. And so what Greenwald is doing here is he's calling them out on their hypocrisy. Now, again, I hadn't read this article. I had saw it, kind of perused it. But how is this messaging? We hope the racist, fascist, genocidal, Nazi-like dictator gets well soon and returns to work, not creating extreme cognitive dissonance among those who believe that they actually were sincere in their Maximilianist enunciations of the invocation of fascism and Nazism regarding Trump. Should liberals not be confused and they overtly disgusted at their leaders who want Trump to survive and return to imposing fascism and genocide on America? No, because they're just fakes. They're phonies. That's the reality of it. I mean, he has a good point here. I did want to bring up that I hate when people use this word, cognitive dissonance. I've heard Jordan Peterson, who is a clinical psychologist, use this incorrectly. A lot of people use this incorrectly. Cognitive dissonance is not holding two beliefs at the same time. It is the competition between two beliefs and the negative, bad feeling you get as the one belief competes for the other and it finally wins it out. That is cognitive dissonance. It is not having two different separate things in your mind. I know that's what it means now in the common vernacular, but just as a technical term, it is the competing ideas and the bad feeling you get as one wins out over the other. Okay? Just a little pet peeve of mine. Don't mean to be too pedantic. So let's get back here. Okay, they wish him well, makes logical sense in the terms of one really believes that Trump is a genocidal Nazi. Blah, 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 blah. There are a few potential explanations that account for this extremely unusual, confounding behavior of praying for rather than against the well-being of a fascist dictator. Perhaps Democratic leaders are simply pretending to be hoping for Trump well-being. Yeah, duh. Or perhaps national Democratic politicians have ascended to a state of spiritual elevation rarely seen in modern political history. Well, don't say that, Glenn, because that's what fascism is about, is elevating the spiritual side of things through government. By the way, folks, the religious right that used to exist never wanted that per se. They just wanted laws that invoked Christianity. And I'm not really for that because I do believe in the separation of church and state. That is a biblical principle. That is a Christ principle. Jesus never wanted the church to be involved with the state. This is my first argument, will always be against the papacy. I will say it every time I say it. Sorry, Catholics. You can be a good Catholic all you want. You have your relationship with Christ. But the church, the organization that you were in is a demonic one. So, you don't like that, sue me, whatever. And there's plenty of evidence of that. The wars, the pedophilia, so much. The Inquisitions, just so much. Witch trials. Of course, they weren't the only ones. The Puritans did witch trials as well. But, all right, let's go on. Does he have a point here? Whatever else is true, their behavior upon hearing that someone they claim to regard as a genocidal, racist, fascist tyrant has contracted the fatal virus is extremely unusual compared to how people throughout history react. Okay. So Glenn seems to have no real point. But the reason why I brought this up specifically is because it was the day after, and I was just looking through The Intercept and trying to look at headlines or whatever. So this is Glenn Greenwald's outlet. And the day before, he's right, Trump's a fascist! My lord, folks, this is just ridiculous. But this is the media for you. This is our modern media, and it's absolutely absurd. And these people pretend to be insiders, and they pretend to know what's going on, and they have their anonymous sources. My source was anonymous. I have to protect my anonymous source. This is what you do in journalism, folks. When you investigate something, and I've investigated things, I can tell you, when you investigate something, you do get anonymous sources. You know what that anonymous source does? It gives you a lead, and that lead provides information. It's not the source itself that you're quoting, because that does not stand up within the court of law. You need a testimony of an individual. And funny enough, all of those insiders in the government, all those CIA and FBI people who knew that Trump was colluding with Russia, well, they're now, according to the DOJ papers, they're now involved in a grand conspiracy to spy on and get the president and destroy his presidency. Isn't that fun? Who are the real fascists? Who are the real authoritarians? Who are the real tyrants? Well, I'll tell you, it's the rhinos and the dinos. It is the Republicans, who are the never-Trumpers and the neocons, and it is the Democratic Party, which is the largest party in the world, has the most voters, and has controlled the United States for nearly 100 years. Now, you might say, "Hey, Bill, didn't the Democratic Party lose its power in the House and the Senate during the Bush years? Wasn't there a supermajority, or under Clinton and everything else?" Yes. That's in recent history, folks. Before that was not so. And we have come to this point because of that. And many of those people, let's say Lindsey Graham, John McCain, many people that you know, many of those people were neocons. They just worked along with them. One of the reasons why we have a very entrenched two-party system in the modern day is because of John McCain's campaign finance reform. And when he helped implement that essentially isolated all the other parties and relegated them to the dustbin. After that, you have the Libertarian Party and the Green Party, and both of them are crazy. And I will say that I'm very libertarian-minded, but I say that as far as libertarian in philosophy, which is why I actually started using the word classical liberal, because if I tell people I'm a libertarian, they go, "Oh, I hate the libertarian," and they think I'm an ANCAP, and it's like, "Oh, hey, this ANCAPs," and actually anarcho-capitalism, if it accounted at all for human nature, which Mr. Murray Rothbard did not. If you read Rothbard, he's really strange fellow, because he's very, very brilliant, but like most brilliant men, he was an atheist and didn't understand human nature. He just thought somehow everyone was going to be good. But look, guys, with all that, I'm going to get out of here. If you want to check out the live show, I will be on in about an hour. Going to be on live on the Ends Justify the Memes. If you're watching this later on, then of course you're going to miss us, but we can check us out some other time. That is ends_justify _ memes. And we do have replays over on YouTube, the Ends Justify the Memes. And then, of course, I do have a subscribe star if you guys want to check that out. In any case, this has been AllMinucOne. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, share it. Please, guys, share it. Share it with your friends. Share any of this stuff. Go check it out for yourself. Never take my word for it. Just realize that there are various perspectives out there, and don't be fooled by the mainstream media or crazy outlets like that just are completely contradictory. In any case, with all that, you all be well.